There is a mobile game called The Simpsons Tapped Out, and as a mobile game, there is nothing that special about it. You tap the screen and build your miniature Springfield and slowly fill it with miniature Springfieldians. All the while, the game funneling you down a carefully constructed rat's maze of timed meters, steadily depleting premium currency, and gambling mechanics that are just subtle enough that you won't notice as they begin to pound on those soft, squishy dopamine glands. And I kind of hate this game. It's insidious in the way a lot of mobile games are, and so why even talk about it? Well, that's because it's helped me answer a question I've been thinking about for a while now. Why? Why is The Simpsons still going? The Simpsons is still airing, with its most recent 30th season seeing the most iconic family of the 90s contorted and shoehorned into the topical issues of 2019. Marge enters a reality TV show, Homer gets a job in a self-driving car factory, and Bart becomes woke. I'm not even going to make the argument that these episodes are bad, just that they are not The Simpsons, and how could they be? The Simpsons is now over 2 decades removed from the era, culture, and people that made the show what it was. And so what's left is nothing but an imitation, with the TV ratings of this most recent 30th season hitting an all-time low. And so, why is it still being made? Well, Tapped Out released in February of 2012, and by October of the following year, EA made an announcement that the game had generated over $100 million in revenue, with that number spiking to $130 million just 3 months later. After which, EA grew suspiciously quiet about just how much their little portable gambling simulator was making. But at over 100 million downloads, several thriving fan communities, and the fact that the game has released 9 content updates in the first half of this year alone, it's a pretty safe bet that Tapped Out is still making a lot of money. The Simpsons name is still lucrative, and what's more, despite the fact that season 30 was one of the lowest reviewed seasons in the show's history, it's still pulling in viewers by the millions, and as long as that viewership remains higher than Fox's other shows and those profits stay consistent, Fox will keep syndicating the show, and The Simpsons will be trapped in its zombified money-making form. And this, unfortunately, is the sad modern reality of The Simpsons. Friends, thank you for joining me today. If you enjoyed this video and would like to help support this channel— okay, no, that's not the end of the video, and we all know it's not. See, there's this other side to The Simpsons in 2019, one that is weird and fascinating and exists in a world entirely outside the scope of the show. And to really talk about it, we first need to cover the topic of memes. Look, I swear to God this is going somewhere. The term meme was originally coined by Richard Dawkins in his 1976 book, The Selfish Gene, which described memes as comparable to genes except cultural instead of biological. A meme could be anything from a style of painting to a composition of a song to even an ideological standpoint. Any idea or concept that could be passed from one person to another, and just like genes, would evolve and mutate as they did. And it was a beautiful concept before the internet ruined it, but what the internet did do was allow for now even very small niche ideas to travel great distances and find large audiences. Anything can now become a meme, a screen cap of Naruto, a poorly thought out raid on an armed government facility, or a clipped piece of animation from an old TV show. And that's exactly what happened with the Homer Bush meme. A piece of animation intended as part of a larger narrative, but that was isolated, compressed, and uploaded to social media, taking on new meaning as a visual expression of embarrassment. with that meaning only evolving further as different people took the meme and changed it, whose use has become so widespread that it even made it back into the TV show itself. What's so curious about The Simpsons, however, is that the Homer Bush meme is not the only time this has happened. Not by a long shot. People have been taking The Simpsons and reappropriating them for decades, even long before the internet, The Simpsons having a rich history of bootleg merchandise. But what the internet did do was took that process and hypercharged it. Anyone can now make their own version of The Simpsons and upload it. And in doing so, creating an entire online subculture of people repurposing The Simpsons in strange and fascinating ways. And this, friends, is what I want to talk about today. The bizarre world of what The Simpsons has become on the internet. And to start, I want to talk about a little blog called Scenic Simpsons. Scenic Simpsons is dedicated to capturing quiet, empty still shots from around Springfield, which it does by screen grabbing moments from old Simpsons episodes and uploading them to Instagram. Most of these images don't even feature any characters and focus on very minor environmental details. A fluorescent exit sign, a still shot of Homer's hammock in the backyard, or a nearly empty break room at the nuclear power plant. And when you isolate these moments like this, something really interesting happens. The way we look at them changes. It makes you think about the town of Springfield in a way you never would from just watching an episode, and lets you appreciate the minimalistic and oddly surreal art style of the show. There's also this really somber atmosphere to them. You know these locations, you've seen them dozens of times, but without the yellow pop of characters, they feel empty and cold, like something's missing, creating this nearly surreal sense of loneliness and nostalgia. If that sounds niche, it really is, and yet this account is followed by hundreds of thousands of people. But where things start to get a little crazy is that Scenic Simpsons is just one of dozens of these accounts on Instagram. There's also Existential Simpsons, Surreal Simpsons, Psychedelic Simpsons, Open Mouth Simpsons, Squinty Eyed Simpsons, Worst Simpsons Faces, and you get the idea. All of which capture moments from old Simpsons episodes and re-upload them in ways that are funny and strange and weirdly beautiful. As strange as Simpsons Instagram is, this is just a fraction of how weird and obsessive and prevalent The Simpsons has become on the internet. There are other memes on an entirely different level. Take, for example, the phenomenon of steamed hams. In late 2017, something really strange started to happen. People started to take an old clip from The Simpsons and changing it. The clip was from season 7, episode 21, titled 22 Short Films About Springfield, one of which told the tale of Principal Skinner having his boss, Super Nintendo Chalmers, over to his house for lunch, only for Skinner to ruin that lunch and attempt to hide his mistake by passing off Krusty Burgers as his own patented family recipe, steamed hams. It's a classic Simpsons bit, the comedy of the scene coming from Skinner's increasingly ridiculous lies, coupled with Chalmers' absurd willingness to believe those lies.
Yes, I should be. Good Lord, what is happening in there?
Aurora Borealis?
Aurora Borealis. At this time of year, at this time of day, in this part of the country, localized entirely within your kitchen.
Yes.
May I see it?
No.
But then, 14 years later, in the early 2010s, things start to get weird. Different fan-made versions of steamed hams begin appearing online, the meme slowly gathering momentum before exploding in late 2017 when hundreds of versions of steamed hams begin to flood the internet. But these uploads were strange and different. People were now taking the entire scene and recreating it, either altering the events of the story through editing or reanimating the scene entirely in completely new mediums. There are so many of these videos. Steamed hams but it's Minecraft, steamed hams but it's a dating sim, steamed hams as a surreal 3D animation, or this.
Oh no.
Steamed clam melting on red. Steamed ham despite your ravages. Steamed clam steamed ham.
There is always a Skinner, there is always a Chalmers, there is nearly always a lie over a ruined roast, but everything else was malleable. But among the best of these videos, something really interesting starts to happen. And to talk about what, I want to discuss a little video called Steamed Hams, but it's edited in the style of Nier Automata. Nier Automata, if you're unfamiliar, is a Japanese RPG/character action game that has this distinct muted visual style and unusual approach to storytelling, covering the same narrative from the perspective of its 3 different protagonists, and encompassing themes like the futility of existence and the raw existential dread of just being alive. It's not the kind of material that should mesh well with a 90s cartoon sitcom, but something really special happens in this video. Like Nier, we're shown the events of the evening first from Chalmers' perspective and then Skinner's. But the video uses this shift in perspective to do something really interesting. An entirely new scene is added for Skinner's trip to Krusty Burger. This is a moment that happens off camera in the original episode, but is now depicted with this Nier-esque tech sequence, as he narrates the experience of standing under the fluorescent lights of the fast food restaurant, and describes his growing anxiety over the evening as every second stretches on for an eternity, and even exploring the guilt he feels over lying to Chalmers, stating that he feels like he's being punished, like he's trapped in his own personal purgatory. I'm aware at this point I'm basically describing my emotional reaction to a Simpsons shitpost, and I could be alone in that. But this new scene, combined with the addition of Nier's somber music and muted color palette, had me feeling genuinely bad for Skinner, making it apparent how much this evening meant to him, as well as his despair as it falls apart. A perspective I'd never had from the dozen or so times I'd watched that original episode. And I think this raises a really interesting idea, and that is the potential for this kind of fan-made content to explore this world and these characters in a way that's not possible in the original show. The world of The Simpsons is one designed to reset every 22 minutes. Whatever happens over the course of an episode, there's a status quo that must be returned to by the end, and that's how the show is able to continue its infinitely repeatable cycle of episodes. Bart will forever be 10 years old, Homer will always return to his job at Sector 7G, and outside real-life events such as the deaths of the voice cast, the world of The Simpsons will remain frozen in time as it has done for 30 years, with the stories of that world needing to remain palatable to a primetime audience. What this means is that there is a glass box surrounding these characters. There is only so much of them we can explore in a 22-minute repeatable episodic format. And this problem compounds with each new season, as every possible character motivation and plot thread becomes exhausted to the point that these characters start to feel like parodies of themselves. And what I think special about fan-made content like the Nier Automata video is it breaks the characters free from that format, and now any number of subjects can be explored, like the weird existentialism of being Seymour Skinner, or even letting these characters address their feelings of being trapped in an infinitely repeatable world. And it's here where I think some really powerful stories can be told. One in particular being the webcomic, Marge Simpson anime. Marge has always been this vaguely tragic figure of The Simpsons. She's this bright, loving person who's always trying to see the best in those around her, but is also someone who's spent her life surrounded by people who do not understand or appreciate her. She's creative and talented, but becoming pregnant with Bart at an early age, she's had to leave those ambitions behind and dedicate herself to the maintenance of her family. And now, at 36 years old, she has no life outside the Simpsons house, no close friends or anyone she can really talk to. There's a sadness to Marge that is so ordinary and human, and while the show does occasionally touch off this side of her, the need for the world to return to its status quo, as well as the need for a certain amount of levity, means she will always be trapped in this existence that makes her unhappy. And Marge Simpson's anime frees her from this cycle. Through a beautifully surreal sequence of watercolors, it explores the isolation and loneliness of Marge, even recontextualizing major moments in her life like the death of Maud Flanders, which in the show is a moment mostly played for laughs, but for here, it's depicted as Marge losing the one person in her life she could really relate to, Maud's death serving as the tragic trigger for Marge to go on an existential journey of self-discovery before she obliterates the world of Springfield in a massive blast of emotion and going on to find new happiness with her children. Marge Simpson anime is fucking beautiful, breaking open the character of Marge in a way that would never be possible in the show itself. And what's so cool is whereas memes like steamed hams or the Homer Bush gif repurpose moments from the show directly by altering the clips themselves, fan works like Marge Simpson's anime is that same memification, I'm so sorry, it's the only word I can think of, only taken one step further, discarding the format of the show entirely and repurposing just the characters themselves, meaning that the ideas and stories these characters can be used to explore are limited only by the author's ability to draw or write them. And through this, The Simpsons can become really anything. Depressing Simpsons Comics examines its creators' feelings of anxiety, loneliness, and nihilism, but gives them this light-hearted and relatable twist by conveying those feelings through the characters of The Simpsons. The Ballad of Dark Homer imagines an alternate reality world of The Simpsons where Homer has been transformed into a monstrous shadow of his former self, and the effect it's had on the people who loved him. And the illustration collection Springfield on Real Estate puts the focus on the town of Springfield itself, showing it in the dead quiet of early morning or late at night, creating this beautiful sense of atmosphere and place, as if this is how the town would look when the cameras stop rolling and it's no longer just the backdrop to a sitcom. There is so much deeper we could go with this, especially if you want to dive into the weird world of bootleg Simpson zines, which cover everything from crude reimaginings of classic Simpsons episodes to psychedelic reinterpretations of these characters to the just baffling Scenic Simpsons hentai, which combines pencil sketches of Scenic Simpsons with hentai. Okay, this is probably too far. We are officially in too deep. But to me, by far the most staggering, impressive, and ludicrous of the Simpsons fan works comes in the form of Bart Kira. On the surface, it's hard to imagine two animated properties more different than The Simpsons and Akira, one being a satirical dismantling of the American family, the other being a dystopian exploration of mass destruction rooted in Japanese history. And yet there are some curious historical parallels between the two. Both had their first American release just over a week apart from each other in December of 1989. Both went on to redefine perceptions of what animation was, as well as the kinds of people that could enjoy it. And 30 years later, both are still seen as beloved cultural touchstones, still being celebrated today. But no celebration of either individually could ever match the size, scale, and scope of Bartkira, which takes the over 2,000 pages of the Akira manga and redraws them with the characters and locations of The Simpsons. And just to be clear here, I do mean every single page. It took 768 artists 2 years to complete Bartkira, each one taking a piece of Akira and redrawing it through the lens of The Simpsons, but each in their own distinctive visual style, with the art of Bartkira swimming beautifully from page to page. One moment it could have all the pop and charm of a Saturday morning cartoon, and then the next it transforms into a dense, meticulously detailed rendering of a graphic novel. The cartoonish style of The Simpsons contrasting so beautifully against Akira's themes of mass destruction and dystopia. There's something so cathartic and sad about seeing the landmarks of Springfield obliterated in the cataclysms of Akira, with the characters of The Simpsons themselves inheriting new meaning as they take up the roles of the cast of Akira. Principal Skinner, for example, is recast as the Colonel, and it just feels so right having Skinner as the last man alive, fighting for peace and order in a world that is falling apart around him. Or Milhouse as Tetsuo, with the hilarious and tragic 10-year-old now using his cataclysmic psychic abilities to take revenge on the world that has been so cruel to him. I love this one page in particular. I don't know if I've ever seen something that so purely captures the loneliness and vulnerability of just being Milhouse. Bartkira is bizarre and compelling and unlike anything else I've ever experienced. It's a weird and hypnotic testament to two of the most impactful and iconic pieces of animated media ever, and transforms both to create something that feels so new and special. And what's more, it's all available for free online, which, just like everything else I talk about this video, I will link in the description below. We've covered a lot today, but there's one more thing I want to talk about. And I leave this to last because to me, this more than anything else we've discussed reflects the modern reality of The Simpsons, and it is the surreal world of Simpsons Wave. On October 27th, 2015, a video was uploaded to Vine that layered an old Season 7 clip of The Simpsons with the track Resonance from the artist Home. And whatever it was, something about this 6-second video just captivated people. It went on to be viewed 31 million times, and over the course of the following year would spawn an entire subgenre of YouTube videos, with different people layering ambient vaporwave mixes over old clips of The Simpsons, but people taking the process a step further and creating entire music videos by heavily altering the Simpsons footage itself, adding in degraded VHS effects to make the animation feel aged and nostalgic, or breaking apart these video clips entirely to create these surreal, dreamlike experiences. And these, friends, are some of my favorite videos on the internet.
Always boasting my emotions on how I'm so fucking broken. Think I'm joking when I'm talking about blowing my head open to the moon.
My favorite of these videos do something really special, and that is use old episodes of The Simpsons to piece together their own distinct narrative. And in particular, the videos of Lucien Hughes, whose 2010 Lilac Sky collages old clips of Milhouse to create this really sweet and sad coming-of-age story. Likewise, the video Dead Bart builds this horrifying alternate reality where a deranged Ned Flanders forms an unseemly relationship with Bart before murdering him. And the video Crisis, maybe my favourite of them all, sees Homer trapped in this gorgeously surreal but sad existence as he becomes lost in a world of loneliness, infidelity, and isolation. And it's in this video particularly where I think Simpsons Wave starts to touch on something deeper. There's a feeling of sadness to a lot of Simpsons Wave, which show their characters as confused and depressed, even frightened, struggling as the world around them distorts and becomes alien, and they lose control of both themselves and their reality. And there's something so appropriate about that, as if these characters have lost their place in time and now suffer in this strange, nebulous existence. And I think in reality, that's what's happened. The Simpsons has lost its identity. The lives of these characters have been artificially extended and distorted to the point that they no longer have any meaning. And what I think is so beautiful about these videos is that that's how they feel. These characters feel lost, like they no longer know who they are or why they exist. And in showing this, they so perfectly captured the plight of modern Simpsons. It's hard watching what happened to The Simpsons. This is a show I cared a lot about, a show that was a huge part of me growing up. And it helped develop everything from my sense of humor to how I interpret media to even personal stuff like coming to terms with feelings of isolation and loneliness, or making me realize that I will someday die. I think that was a lot of people's experience with The Simpsons, and why so many years later, people are still so passionate about it. We miss that old show. We miss what The Simpsons used to be, and I think that's what makes what The Simpsons has become on the internet so beautiful. When Matt Groening created The Simpsons, it wasn't a media empire, it wasn't a global phenomenon or a merchandising machine. It was just one struggling cartoonist's guttural reaction to the sanitized, idealized depiction of the American family. And so he took that depiction and distorted it, changing it and giving it new meaning. And in doing so, creating something so beautiful, rebellious, and powerful that 30 years later, we're still talking about it, we're still drawing it, and we're still making videos about it. And that to me is the beautiful thing about Simpsons Wave or Marge Simpson's Anime or Bart Kira. When I read these comics or watch these videos, I can feel that there's an entire community of people out there who still care about The Simpsons the same way I do. And so, while there's still the licensed series with its mobile game and loss of identity, there's also something else. There's the online community of people still expressing their love for the classic show in countless strange and amazing ways. And to me, this is where The Simpsons lives on. This is the bizarre modern reality of The Simpsons.